that there was no chemical attack, just a standard attack using standard warheads and not very many injuries at that. But now let's go back to CBS for the very latest on this situation.
Dan Rather, CBS News in New York, as we continue to let roll the first pictures shown in the United States of the Scud missile attack tonight on the Tel Aviv area of Israel. Other sections of Israel were hit by the Iraqi missiles, including at least a couple up in the Haifa area. A total all over Israel of 8 to 10. 3 to 5 of the missiles hit in the Tel Aviv area. Here's the crater caused by the conventional warhead on this particular Scud. The Scuds can be equipped with a lot of different warheads. General George Christ just pointing out to us here in the studio that from the look of this damage, part of Saddam Hussein's message may be that he has a somewhat larger conventional warhead on these Scud missiles than was otherwise widely believed. And if the Iraqis go after Saudi Arabia, in Saudi Arabia, the Saudis have Chinese ballistic missile with a megaton warhead to fire back. Now, all of that we were told by Leslie Stahl at the White House not long ago, as we continue to look at this damage in Tel Aviv caused by the Scuds, that some Scud missiles had been fired at Saudi Arabia. The U.S. Defense Department had confirmed that. Where they were fired and where they hit and what damage they did in Saudi Arabia remains unclear at this hour. Now, as we continue to look at these photographs, first pictures in from Israel of the damage there tonight, keep in mind that the casualty total is said to be very low. The first reports are not even many people were wounded by this. You may want to note that the sirens had sounded in Tel Aviv before the Scuds went off, and that may account for the what is now an amazingly low casualty figure when you look at how much damage was wrought by this one single Scud hit in this particular Tel Aviv's neighborhood. In other late Gulf War headlines tonight, a confirmed 7 Iraqi Scud missiles hit Israel, possibly as many as 10. Israel denies that retaliation is actually in progress at the moment. They may have scrambled in the direction of Iraq intending to retaliate, but as of the moment, the Israelis say they are not retaliating. President Bush is described as, quote, outraged. Allied warplanes continue to hit Iraqi positions inside Kuwait and inside Iraq. That includes B-52 strikes. A late announcement from the Pentagon confirming that Iraqi Scud missiles have been fired into both Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now, practically nothing is known about the Scud missiles fired into Saudi Arabia. General Christ was just noting for us that the Saudis have some Chinese missiles with which they could retaliate if they chose to do so. The White House says now that President Bush is, quote, outraged. President Bush is known to have met tonight, I shouldn't say no, reported to have met tonight with Secretary of State Baker and has been in touch with the Israeli representatives in Washington and also representatives of some of the Arab allies, including the Egyptians. No confirmation that the missile or missiles fired into Saudi Arabia even hit anything. We're continuing to check. All the Defense Department has said is that, yes, some Scuds were fired at Saudi Arabia tonight. This is in addition and separate apart from the Scuds that hit Israel. We do know what happened to the missiles aimed at Israel. At least we know a few things. Israeli radio says 7 people were what it describes as slightly hurt in tonight's missile attacks, which dramatically alter the boundaries of this Gulf War. Saddam Hussein had threatened to hit Israel, said he would hit Israel immediately if the United States attacked him. He made good on that threat tonight. It is not absolutely confirmed if any of the warheads on the Scuds that hit Israel were chemical or biological or nerve gas. This particular strike in this particular Tel Aviv neighborhood clearly, and according to the Tel Aviv mayor, had a conventional weapons charge on it, but one larger than most military experts would have expected on a Scud. At the United Nations, Israel's ambassador is quoted as denying that there's been any retaliation or will be any. He says Israel was left vulnerable to such an attack.
About 8 to 10 Scud missiles were launched from Iraq against Israel. Some of them hit the areas of Tel Aviv and Haifa. It just shows what kind of risk Israel took upon itself when it refrained from preemptive strike.
In the air war over Iraq and Kuwait, the British report the loss of a second Tornado warplane in the offensive. That would raise to the confirmed total of 4 Allied warplanes lost so far. Those are officially acknowledged as lost. That includes 1 U.S. warplane, an F-18 Hornet. U.S. warplanes were busy all through the night and day launching more attacks from Saudi Arabia. One American aviator talked of his experiences over Baghdad and of his encounter with Iraqi warplanes.
We didn't, obviously we couldn't see if they were coming close. Discretion being the better part of valor, we decided that we would leave the target area before we took one up at tailplane.
Iraq now claims that 60 Allied planes total have been destroyed. The Allies say that it's 4 planes total lost so far. There are suggestions from the Allied side that the Iraqis are trying to count in some Tomahawk missiles that they may have brought down. Those are guided missiles that did not contain any pilots. Let's go back now to Tom Fenton in Tel Aviv for an update on what's happening in the wake of the Iraqi Scud missile attacks on Israel. Tom?
Well, we've got some more reports, Dan, from one report from one of our own cameramen who visited 2 of the sites in Tel Aviv. The first one in Holon, he said that was an industrial area. It set off a fairly large fire, and that was clearly a conventional warhead. The second one, that was the ones you've seen in those video pictures with a large crater, that was in the Hatikva area. It landed on a house. There was a lot of blast damage in the area. That also was clearly a conventional warhead. People there was some panic. People there were complaining that the police were afraid to go into the area. I mean, I suppose it's natural if there's a suspicion that it was a chemical attack. And one of the first persons to arrive was Mayor Shlomo Lahat, commonly called Tish, a very popular man, a man who has been reelected time and time again as mayor of Tel Aviv. Now, the one area up in the north where there was some question about nerve gas, that north, I mean 5 miles north of here on the highway at the Tel Baruch intersection, apparently that area has been hosed down and decontaminated. Once again, I have no firm report about whether or not that was a non-conventional chemical warhead. So far, we have no firm reports of chemical warheads, and only reports of people either lightly injured or mildly injured. No reports yet of deaths, but as usual in cases like this, it's a long time before all the information filters in. It's in the middle of the night. There's some confusion, of course, and we probably won't know for several hours the full extent of what has happened.
Thanks, Tom Fenton. Let's check in with Bill Plant at the State Department for an update on Secretary Baker's conversations with some of the Arab allies, and I believe, is it true, Bill, also with the Israeli ambassador?
That's right, Dan. We know that the Secretary was at the White House, as Leslie Stahl described earlier, and he did talk to the Israeli ambassador, the Syrian ambassador, and the Saudi ambassador once they had learned of these Scud attacks on Israel. Now, it's safe to say, I think, that the Secretary probably repeated the American position that we wish that the Israelis would not retaliate against Iraq for firing the Scud missiles. However, I don't know that. It is, however, what the United States asked Israel to do last week. And last week, Israel said no. Now, the U.S. would have offered to defend Israel again, and we'll see where that goes. It's too early to say. In the meantime, of course, it was necessary to talk to the Syrians and the Saudis, because the understanding that the Secretary of State had with them when he left the Middle East last week was that if Israel had to respond to an attack by Iraq, that should not break up the coalition. And that's where that is left, and I'm sure that the Secretary tonight was busy trying to make sure that he still had that understanding.
Bill, any information there on this surprise announcement that in addition to the Scuds that hit Israel, that some Scuds were at least fired at Saudi Arabia?
No, there was word here of the Scuds that went toward Israel, none here of the Scuds that came toward Saudi Arabia, although the Defense Department seems to know. And as you've repeated several times, there's no indication that any Scud missiles have landed on Saudi Arabia.
Bill Plant at the State Department. Our CBS News coverage of the changing war in the Gulf continues.
When I think of everything I put in my hair to make it shiny, more manageable. And all it took was a touch of VO5. Yeah, VO5.
VO5 hairdressing. A touch does so much.
Wow. I just tried VO5 for the first time. Yeah, the stuff in the tube your old man used for control. The stuff that's been around forever. Now I know why.
VO5 hairdressing. A touch does so much.
Come on along, I'll take you to the lullaby of Broadway. The hickory and ballyhoo.
The lullaby of Broadway.
And in the center of it all
is the Milford Plaza.
Stay at the Milford Plaza Hotel with cocktail, dinner, and breakfast for $49.50 per person. Discover why we are the lullaby of Broadway.
The Milford Plaza is the lullaby of all Broadway.
Cleaning toilets is a lousy job, so I invented 2000 Flushes Blue to help you. It's loaded with detergents, cleans and deodorizes automatically. Up to 4 months. Try my 2000 Flushes Blue or Green. Cleans your toilet with every flush.
I'll never get through tomorrow if I don't get some Z's.
Introducing single-dose maximum strength Nitol. Just one will help you fall fast asleep fast. New maximum strength Nitol. Just one Nitol will help you get a lot of Z's.
When life's little irritations are everywhere you turn, more people turn to Visine. When eyes need it most, it's the most trusted name for relief. Visine gets the red out and a whole lot more.
Why do I enjoy healthier Alpine Lace, low cholesterol and low sodium Swiss low cheese? Because it tastes so good. And now it's even lower in fat.
The healthy and tasty Swiss low cheese tastes so good. Alpine Lace.
Here at CBS News, we're monitoring the continuing air war over Iraq and Kuwait, monitoring the maneuvering and moving up of U.S. ground forces closer to the Kuwaiti border and extending farther west inside Saudi Arabia still, but along the Kuwaiti border, and also trying to stay up to date and sort out fact from other information concerning the Scud missile attacks Iraq successfully launched against Israel tonight, and the new confirmation from the U.S. Defense Department by way of the White House that some Scud missiles were fired in the direction of Saudi Arabia. To help us sort some of this out, and joining us now is the Israeli Consul General to the United Nations, Uriel Severe. Thank you very much for being with us, Consul General. First of all, what can you tell us about Israel retaliating against Iraq or declining to retaliate?
Well, the only thing, Dan, that I'm ready to say is what we have said before, that we will not attack Iraq unless we will be attacked. We were attacked tonight by missiles, and therefore reserve ourselves the right of self-defense.
We're looking at videotape as we talk here of the first pictures taken by our outstanding camera crew and sound man in Tel Aviv of the damage in one neighborhood, and it is not a pleasant evening to say the least when one looks at photographs such as these.
It's a very difficult evening for all of us, definitely for all of Israelis back home and for us here who have families in Israel.
I want to make sure I understand exactly what the situation is insofar as you understand it, Consul General. You said that Israel reserves the right to retaliate. That's been its policy, a long-standing policy. When someone hits Israel, you reserve the right to strike back. Insofar as you know, has Israel retaliated, or is it now in the process of retaliating?
I cannot answer you, and I will not answer you. From this moment on, we have a new situation. We have been attacked, and we reserve ourselves this right. As to the exercise of the right, we will not announce anything in public.
I want to make sure that we have our facts straight. There was a report that the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations tonight had told some journalists, A, that Israel was not retaliating and would not retaliate. Have you spoken with him? Do you know exactly what he said?
Well, I think it must have been a misunderstanding by the reporter. There's no way in which the ambassador said or could have said that we commit ourselves not to retaliate. We said all along that should we be attacked, we will defend ourselves, we will defend our populations, and reserve the right to strike back.
And that's the official Israeli position?
Absolutely.
And you don't expect any change in that whatsoever?
It's a traditional position because it is our duty in all of Israel's history to protect our citizens and not have anybody fight for us or fight for the protection of Israeli lives.
Now, Mr. Consul General, what do you know about the casualties? Have you had any direct contact with Israel, and can you update us on the casualties?
Well, it was very difficult, as you know, to get through to Israel. I spoke to Israel about 8 to 9 minutes ago. It seems that the initial report is of 7 light injured.
7 light injuries. And what do we know about the warheads on these Scuds? Were they all, has it been confirmed that they were all conventional warheads?
I don't have full information on that yet.
We know from this one neighborhood that the mayor of Tel Aviv said in that one neighborhood it was a conventional warhead. Where does this go from here? I mean, what should we be looking for in terms of directions of the war in the Persian Gulf, and how the strategy and tactics may change as a result of what happened this evening?
Well, obviously this gives the war a new dimension. And whoever thought yesterday that the war is over and Iraq is defeated, and I don't think that anybody officially thought so, is obviously mistaken.
Mr. Consul, excuse me for interrupting, but let's pause for a second. We have new pictures and sound in from Tel Aviv tonight. This was the scene in Tel Aviv earlier this evening as the air raid sirens sounded. Scud is on the way. And Israeli citizens scurried into their protective alert posture. Gas masks were called for. Our Tom Fenton had his on and off several times. That's the way it is, because no one knows what these terrible missiles carry with them. Mr. General, what, in your opinion, you're a representative of the Israeli government here, as you see these developments fall one on top of another this evening, your judgment, what's the most important thing for Americans to know about what's happening?
Well, the Americans don't have to hear it from us. I think the American administration, with our full support, have learned the lesson as to who Saddam Hussein is. And we have learned this lesson again tonight. Anybody who provokes a third war in a decade, anybody who is able to send these missiles, as we just saw, on civilian population, is dangerous and not rational. And I think this is known by this administration, and this is why this war was provoked by Iraq, and we find ourselves in a new dimension of this confrontation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Latest information from Israel is that the casualty toll, so far as can be determined, if we're still in the early stages, is light from the some 8 to 10 Scud missiles believed to have hit Israel. Tom Fenton is now with the camera crew that shot the pictures of the damage in that Tel Aviv neighborhood. Tom?
Dan, I have with me Amnon Eventov, our chief cameraman, who has been out and about shooting some of these pictures, and I thought it would be interesting to hear from him and a description of exactly how things looked and how people were reacting.
Good morning. It took us something like 30 minutes to drive in a very deserted town in order to try to find the location where it was hit. And when we found the place, it was quite a strong picture. I had in mind the pictures that I saw on television from Beirut, or what I saw myself in Beirut at the time. A lot of destruction, and very few people around, only the security people and fire brigade. And the destruction was very, very strong on something like 100-meter circle.
Now, what neighborhood was this, and what was damaged?
The damage was the houses. Some houses collapsed, and a lot of
blast damage?
Blast damage as well, yes.
What about casualties?
Casualties, we heard that there were few, very few, and slightly damaged, wounded. And this was in Hatikva neighborhood, where normally we used to eat very good in very good restaurants normally.
There's a very good Yemeni restaurant there, right. Now, this was a conventional warhead?
This was a conventional warhead, no chemical, no gas.
This, of course, is a terror weapon. It's supposed to spread terror. It's not a military a militarily effective thing. I mean, did people panic?
People panic a little bit. First, when they saw us, they asked for help from us. They didn't know what we're doing there. There in this area, there are a lot of old people as well, and there were a little panic. And we tried to calm them down, of course, but we had to go and give the pictures to the world. And that's what we did.
Amnon, thank you very much. Dan?
Thanks, Tom Fenton. We just have in photographs, pictures of Baghdad, Iraq, under attack last night. Let's look and listen if there's any sound on this. Silent pictures. Aircraft strikes, anti-aircraft fire into the night sky. Not since World War II have scenes of an air attack on a modern 20th century city and scenes such as this. Now here's some sound.
Guidance systems of planes and missiles sent their payloads to Saddam Hussein's front door.
This is right along the Tigris River near the hotel section and near the presidential palace.
Those who were caught out in it
ITN reporter narrates.
At the time of this report, I do not know the extent of Iraqi casualties. The bombs and missiles targeted Saddam Hussein's palace, his communications centers, his warfare production plants, and his missile bases. They were destroyed by high-tech weapons in a theater of war hitherto unwitnessed. It was impossible to pick out all the weaponry, but I saw cruise missiles skidding across the skyline to their pre-programmed targets. The Iraqi defenses were spectacular in their intensity. But where was Iraq's iron fist, its air force, and much boasted defense plan? To all intents and purposes, it was non-existent in this crucial phase of the war. Minutes after Baghdad erupted into battle, the Iraqi authorities ordered all the journalists they could find.
Re-rack it. We're going to try to re-rack that footage. The most dramatic photographs of the war so far coming through tonight. One, that mother with her children, including a small baby in Israel, trying desperately to get the gas mask on them and to cover the baby with the chemical weapons precautionary material in the cradle. And now these pictures of the bombs bursting in air and the rockets' red glare over Baghdad last night as a U.S.-led air armada poured it on Baghdad.
Of lethal force. It was terrifying to watch an attack on this scale and so close. Iraqi anti-aircraft gunners probed the sky with trails of tracer bullets, but no attacking aircraft were visible to the naked eye.
This gives you some idea. It's one thing to talk about what the scene was. It's another to see it. It gives you some idea of the kind of courage it takes to fly into this kind of defense and what it must be like on the ground when this kind of air battle, so far as we can see, mostly ground to air and way of defense, erupts over a large city such as Baghdad.
But at the time of this report, I do not know.
People run for cover in the darkness.
The bombs and missiles
and the sky lit up like apparently for hours this way last night over Baghdad.
They were destroyed by high-tech weapons.
These pictures were taken from high above a hotel. I can tell where the location is here roughly. One of the three major hotels, probably the Rashid. You can see glimpses of the river, but the presidential palace in the distance there, and up the road a bit. I don't think we see it, the Iraqi Defense Ministry.
Iron fist, its air force, and much boasted defense plan. To all intents and purposes,
much of this so-called AAA fire, anti-aircraft artillery, and then the scenes of the Iraqis taking cover. Baghdad last night under air attack. David Martin is at the Pentagon with an update about the Scud missiles launched at Saudi Arabia. David?
Dan, the Pentagon now confirms that a Patriot anti-aircraft missile based in Saudi Arabia shot down one Iraqi Scud missile fired from Iraq into Saudi Arabia. I think we actually saw that happen on a videotape that was running when Bob Simon was talking to us from from Dhahran. We saw a missile go up in the air and then explode. At the time, we didn't have an explanation for exactly what had happened. I think that's what we were witnessing. More on the Scud launchers. We believe that these launchers, that the launches both against Saudi Arabia and in Israel came from mobile Scud missile launchers that escaped the first waves of the American air attack. And congressional sources have said that this afternoon, when Defense Secretary Cheney and General Colin Powell, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, went up to Capitol Hill to brief them on the progress of the air war, they told the members of Congress that 15 to 20 mobile Scud launchers had escaped the initial air assault. So that would be 15 to 20 Scud launchers on the loose, and that would apparently be what is causing these Scud attacks both on Israel and Saudi Arabia. During these same briefings, Cheney and Powell also reportedly assured the members of Congress that there would be no frontal assault on Kuwait. But, and then they said, we have other plans. However, I think you have to be cautious about what that means, because in military terminology, a frontal assault may mean something different than it means to the average person. I think when they are ruling out a frontal assault, they are ruling out basically a World War I human wave assault on the Iraqi trenches. I don't think they are ruling out an attempt to punch through Iraqi lines at their weakest point. However, the report from congressional sources is that they have other plans than a frontal assault. One more thing on this question of whether or not Israel is retaliating against Iraq. The information that made U.S. officials think that that Israel might be retaliating came from the U.S. Central Command in Saudi Arabia, and it was based on radar contacts which showed Israeli planes heading in the direction of Iraq. Now, I do not have an update on what became of those Israeli planes on the radar scopes, but that was the source of the information that Israel might be retaliating against Iraq.
I want to follow up with you, David Martin, but quickly, we're going to try to play the videotape. We didn't know what was happening. This is videotape of a U.S. Patriot ground-to-air missile knocking down a Scud missile tonight in Saudi Arabia. Boombo. The Patriot missiles are around the air base in Dhahran. In our most recent visit there, they had reinforced the Patriots. You could see them. The place bristled with these Patriot missiles. And I remember very well a U.S. Army corporal, when I said, can you hit anything with that? He riveted his eyes right on mine. He says, you go back home and tell him, Mr. Rather, if anything Saddam's got comes this way, we'll knock it out. Now, I don't know whether it was that corporal that did it, but you could see on the videotape that's what happened. So, Bob Simon in Saudi Arabia, something did happen around the airbase tonight after all.
Something did happen, Dan, and as hesitant as I am to strike an ominous note, we've been reporting for days now that intelligence sources in the region have believed for some time that Saddam Hussein's three objectives were to hit Israel, to hit Saudi oil installations, and to cause American casualties. Well, he has now succeeded in two of those objectives. He has launched Scuds to Israel. He has hit a Saudi oil installation. Let us hope and pray that he misses on the third. I think that the Scud missiles, those launched to Israel and those that were knocked down by Patriots here, in any case which did not land any place that we've heard about, have been of very little military significance. It appears from what we know right now that they did not succeed in sucking Israel into the war, which was certainly their prime objective. If they succeeded in anything, Dan, it was in puncturing the euphoria that has been rampant around here for the last half a day. And in some respects, that might not be entirely a bad thing. Dan?
Yeah. Indeed, Bob. And Secretary of Defense Cheney, General Colin Powell were saying earlier today that this is very serious business, and in their words, it may go on for some time. Now, Stick here with us. Our continuous coverage will roll on. We're going to bring in General George Christ to talk about when David Martin said there's no thought of a frontal ground assault to retake Kuwait. We'll talk with General Christ about what some of the possibilities are. But in the seconds we have left for this section, Ed Bradley, it practically, I'm not afraid to say, takes my breath away. This thing reads like a bad war novel, but it's not a novel. It's not a movie. We see it happening. The Patriot knocks a Scud out of the sky. Scuds hit Israel in the scene of that air battle over Baghdad, never to be forgotten.
All right, and I think as chilling as watching the war footage was watching the civilians in Tel Aviv in an apartment with a mother putting gas mask on her young children, and with the baby you saw in a bassinet in a crib already covered with the protective plastic to keep any chemical or nerve gas away from it. I think that's the thing that we forget in this country, what war is really like, because it's something we don't experience here. We're used to seeing what happens with our soldiers in battle, but we don't see too often what happens with civilians, even when they're not in battle, just in preparation for it and the kind of uncertainty and the fear that they have to live with on a day-to-day basis. It's chilling.
The only thing I can recall in my memory, back in World War II in the early stages in the Battle of Britain, the air raid siren, the people going underground, these are those pictures that we mentioned earlier of the mother putting the gas mask on her small children in Tel Aviv. This was Tel Aviv early this evening as these sirens sounded and Israeli radio warned everyone that Scud missiles apparently are on the way. Off to the right here in this frame is special chemical gear over the cradle where there's a baby. We're going to talk strategy and what the building possibility of a ground war may entail in a moment. For the moment, these are the headlines from the expanding Gulf War this evening. Israel is hit by a confirmed 7, possibly as many as 10 Iraqi Scud missiles. Casualties are reported to be light, but that's unconfirmed. The White House says missiles also were fired at Saudi Arabia. We saw on videotape a Patriot missile knocking one of those Scuds out of the sky. President Bush condemns the attacks he's described as being, quote, outraged. Israel denies that retaliation is actually happening. However, the Israelis say they do reserve the right to strike back at the Iraqis. Dramatic new pictures tonight of last night's American raid on Baghdad and the Iraqi effort to beat back the U.S. air attack.
The illuminated sky was filled with a star-spangled display of lethal force.
Star-spangled display of lethal force over Baghdad. These pictures, Baghdad City last night. This night, the focus is on Iraqi retaliation. Saddam Hussein made good on his threat to lob missiles into Israel. Scud missiles fired into Israel and into Saudi Arabia. One of those in Saudi Arabia was knocked out of the sky by the Patriot anti-Scud missile defense. The Patriot designed to knock down warplanes, but it also can knock down missiles. Now, as his top aides huddled in the White House this evening, President Bush said that Iraq's missile attacks, quote, outraged him. The president's spokesman said Allied warplanes are even now hitting missile sites inside Iraq. Let's go to Washington live. Statement from the Israeli ambassador to the United States.
There has been an unprovoked attack by Iraq, launching Scud missiles, or perhaps improved Scud missiles, at purely civilian targets in Israel. Jeopardizing the lives of both Jews and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians, who live next to each other, are often intermingled, and in a situation where Israel has time and time again declared that it is not part of the conflict with Iraq, it is not part of the coalition, and as a matter of fact, it has remained with a low profile, if you remember that term, for all these months since the beginning of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. We don't have exact details as of yet. We understand that there's a possibility that more than 10 missiles were actually launched at Israel. Probably 2 hit the Tel Aviv area, and another one hit the Haifa area. There may have been another hit, but that is not clear as of yet. The missiles in the Tel Aviv area hit a neighborhood in the southern part of the city, inhabited mostly by elderly people and laborers, people who toil for their livelihood. We have so far, and we hope this is a final count, received information that there have been 6 or 7 injured, fortunately not seriously injured, but I don't know the exact details. And there has been considerable damage in property. Among other things, because that area where the missiles hit does not usually contain the best of housing, and therefore these houses were probably damaged more than perhaps other houses would have been. Immediately after the information about the missile strike became known, I was in contact with the Secretary of State and the Deputy Secretary of State and with the White House, all of whom conveyed their sympathy in the strongest possible feeling, in the strongest possible language. The word mentioned was devastated, and I must say, listening to their voices, they were indeed. And I was asked to convey this message, as well as others, to my government, to my Prime Minister, which, of course, I promptly did. I know that the two governments, or their representatives, have been in contact and are in contact since then. I would like to add only 2 further comments. Number one, that the government of Israel, and let me add, fully supported by the opposition in Israel, has declared that, of course, Israel reserves the right to respond in any way it would deem fit, without going at the present time into particulars what the decision of the Israeli government in that respect will be. My final comment is that Israel took a very tough decision, knowingly, to risk a first strike on it. We knew that we might be hit. I myself was often asked on TV, do we take these threats seriously? I did say, we all did. We take these threats very, very seriously. There's no reason whatsoever to doubt these threats. Nevertheless, the Israeli government, supporting America's political aims and complying with the United States government requests, decided to refrain from a preemptive attack on those launching pads, on those missile launchers from which we were threatened. We knew that this was a calculated risk. We have now, unfortunately, been forced to give the proof that this actually happened. So far, the state of Israel and the people of Israel, and thank God, the casualties were not more numerous. But so far, the state of Israel has paid the dearest price of any of the countries in the Middle East which have faced Iraqi aggression, except Kuwait itself. And Israel, as I said in the beginning, was not a party to this conflict at all. This is all I have to say. Thank you very much. And good night.
The Israeli ambassador live from Washington, D.C., emphasizing that Israel retains what it sees as its right to retaliate against Iraq, but he did not say that Israel was in the process of retaliating, but he underscored that Israel reserved the right to retaliate. Let's go to David Martin, the Pentagon, who has new details on tonight's Scud missile attacks which hit Israel and the apparently unsuccessful efforts to hit Saudi Arabia, although there's some doubt about that. David?
Dan, it appears the U.S. Forces, or I should say the Allied forces in Saudi Arabia, have done some retaliating of their own against those mobile Scud launchers that fired those missiles both at Israel and Saudi Arabia. They are flying airstrikes constantly over there, and they modified the airstrikes to go after those mobile Scud missile launchers, because once they launched, the rocket plume of the launch had given away their location, and at least for a brief period they knew where at least some of the mobile Scud launchers were. No word yet on exactly what success these strikes had in catching these mobile launchers out in the open, but it is still the assumption and the working assumption of the Pentagon that the Scud missile threat continues. So whether or not they were successful in getting the launchers that sent these missiles in the direction of Israel and Saudi Arabia, they do not appear to think that they have gotten all of the mobile Scud launchers.
David Martin, a French television correspondent, speaking from Dhahran, reports that one Scud missile actually hit the Dhahran airport. We know that another was shot down by a U.S. Patriot. Any indication that that may be true from what you found at the Defense Department?
No, and a senior Pentagon official within the last 15 minutes talked to a large group of reporters to confirm the one incident in which a Patriot shot down a Scud missile, but he did not mention anything about a Scud missile landing at the Dhahran airport.
Thanks, David Martin. The Israeli army says, somebody's giving me a report here, I don't have it in detail yet. Let's go to Bob Schieffer with retired Marine Corps General George Christ. Two things, Bob, I'd like General Christ to deal with, if you don't mind. One is show us on the map where these mobile Scud missiles are believed to be and why it was that the original tremendous air attacks by the United States and its allies did not knock them out. And secondly, let's talk about where U.S. ground forces are and this report out of Washington, which congressional leaders say, listen, you can bet when the ground offensive is launched, it isn't going to be a straight-on attack to liberate Kuwait.
Okay, General, you've got your assignment. Let's.
Dan, the Scud missiles were probably fired from the north of the Basra area or further to the west. All of that is within range of Dhahran. The missile itself is about a 400-mile missile. It's about 300 miles from Dhahran up here to the Kuwaiti area. So we add another 100 miles, and you've got to put it out in here. Now, why weren't they knocked out, or why did they come back? I think the first missiles we caught, Dan, were on a pad. Every one of these ballistic missiles has a pre-prepared pad on which it sits. This pad is already surveyed in, so all you have to do is put the missile on the pad, fuel it up, and fire it. And you have the exact azimuth and range to your target. Now, in the case of a mobile missile, if you hit the missile on the pad, it's a simple matter of cleaning away the equipment on the pad and bringing a new missile in, refueling it, setting it up, and going. We had a great deal of trouble in the Iran-Iraq war trying to find the Iranian silkworm missiles. So I think that's what they're doing here. If you notice, they've done it all under the cover of darkness. Hard to see those missiles when they're being put in position just like that.
General, let me interrupt for just 1 second. And Bob Schieffer, part of what we were trying to get straight a while ago was this report from Jerusalem in which a Army spokesman for the Israelis says that all of the Iraqi missiles that struck Israel early Friday apparently carried conventional explosive warheads, not poison gas. This Israeli Army official says that 7, 8, or 9 Scud missiles, he's not sure how many hit, but he is now convinced that all of them carried conventional weapons. We're also told to Bob Schieffer that the Israeli Premier Shamir has been told by President Bush that the United States is retaliating for the Iraqi attack. Now, that's according to Israeli radio, and we know from Washington that President Bush has condemned Iraq's missile attack on Israel as, quote, further aggression. I wonder, Bob, what that will mean for the Iraqis in the coming hours.
Well, I think the news will not be good, would be the one thing I would say. General, it seemed to me, listening to the Israeli ambassador as he was talking, he says perhaps more than 10 missiles were fired. It seems to me maybe the news out of this is that these missiles are just what they're advertised to be, not very accurate.
Well, there is a new missile under development, Dan, that we're beginning to wonder a little bit about whether this is the missile we were looking at, something called the Al-Abbas, which has about a 560-mile range, which would have put it well within the range of Israel, which the 400-mile modified Scud is barely on the edge of the range. It also has a larger warhead. It's difficult to tell whether this was that missile, but Saddam had said some months back that he had a new missile. Again, this may be the surprise, this new missile, but I'm speculating at the moment.
And the pictures we just saw, General, may be part of what the president was talking about, because those were live pictures from Saudi Arabia. There they are, U.S. Air Force planes taking off. This may be the response. The president, in the statement, if I recall, that was issued at the White House, the statement said that the president had ordered new attacks on those missile sites. Now, it was my understanding, listening to briefings this morning, that Defense Department officials said that the president had given all the orders that were necessary. But apparently the White House wants to re-emphasize that the president was outraged by this.
Right, Bob. Clearly he feels it necessary to re-emphasize the necessity to go back after the missiles. But if they caught the plumes when they launched, they can get in on them. And quite possible. We had a lot of aircraft moving north. It's very easy to vector an aircraft in. But once those missiles get away back into wherever they've been hidden before, we're going to have trouble, as General Dugan said earlier, Dan, finding those missiles.
General, quickly, we're trying to cover so much ground here. There's so many people who have young men and women in the ground forces in Saudi Arabia, and we've been talking as the evening goes along about possibly the schedule for a ground force assault to retake Kuwait, possibly coming on. I want to talk about what the possibilities are, but before we do that, I'm just handed to note that we have new photographs from Israel of fire and damage by the Scud missiles. So let's take a look at this. This is an overview of Tel Aviv tonight as the Scud missile attack came in. Fires and damage from the Scud missiles, and apropos your point, General Chris, that the damage is much more extensive than we'd first been led to believe. But General Chris, now back to the possibility of what everybody expects will have to be a ground assault to retake Kuwait. We were told that General Colin Powell, General Schwarzkopf, General Powell and Schwarzkopf, responsible for the strategy, were adhering to two pieces of fundamental American Army beliefs. One, coming from General Grant, that you muster overwhelming force if possible. Two, Andrew Jackson, the Confederate general, who was a believer that you scout out the enemy, a lot of reconnaissance, then you always flank him, and then once you get him en route, that you pour it on. Keeping those two strategies in mind, what are the main options when it comes to a ground assault to retake Kuwait?
Well, Dan, let's look at the map a little bit and see how they're laid out. As you can see, from here to here is about 200 miles. That is the Iraqi front. The front along the Kuwaiti border is about 110 miles. So that's what we're dealing with. He has infantry divisions lined up along the front, and at these big red blobs, which represent essentially a division, an infantry division, they have strong points. Behind this is another line of armor and infantry to support this. Then you have sort of a hole, and the big Republican guards way to the north. Now, General Schwarzkopf has got a few tricks in his bag. He's got almost 3,000 tanks. He's got a Marine division at sea. He's got a paratroop division ready to go. Now, how would you do this thing? Well, one, you're not going to want to attack straight on a la the Battle of the Somme. You're going to look over this 110 miles and find the holes. It's not a Maginot Line. There's holes in this thing, weak points. In those weak points, say here or around the flank, you can pour in 3, 4 armored divisions, hit them very hard, break through, and then spread out once you get inside. Leave these things sit. You don't have to take them on right away. At the same time, you could pin him with infantry like the Marines, bring your amphibs in, and you've now broken this line. Now you, again, have these people cut off and they're broken. Once you do that, Dan, command and control becomes very difficult. The man that's trying to defend this area doesn't know where we're coming till we're there. Once we're there, he suddenly loses communication with his forces. Where does he counterattack? He doesn't know. Once he starts counterattacking, let's say with 1 or 2 of these armored divisions, he suddenly runs into 5 armored divisions backed up by heavy artillery and airplanes over the top of them. He doesn't do it. So what you're looking for is a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 at any point along the line. Now up here in the north are the big 15,000-man Republican Guard divisions. The best he's got, well-equipped, all volunteers. Where are they going to go? They have to decide where we're going. They won't know until we make our moves. And then he's got to come down. If he comes down, we can work him over by air, and then he's got it.
A flanking movement of some kind in the offing. General Chris. Our CBS News coverage of the war in the Persian Gulf continues. As General Chris was just explaining, that when it comes to a ground assault to free Kuwait, if one becomes necessary, there's a hope and prayer that the air bombardment may cause Saddam Hussein to fold, but that hope became thinner and less likely to occur tonight with Saddam Hussein striking back with the Scud missile attacks on Israel, even firing some at Saudi Arabia, at least one knocked out of the sky by a Patriot missile, and the possibility of the necessity of a ground assault against the Iraqi forces in Kuwait grows, and as General Chris was explaining, it's not likely to be head-on a la World War I. Some kind of flanking movement by coming in the western section of the desert in Saudi Arabia and or amphibious assault, the most likely ways to do it. I'm joined here now by Walter Cronkite and Ed Brad, who's been here right the way through. Walter, any ideas, have you talked to anyone who suggested why Saddam did not use his chemical weapons against Israel?
Well, he may just simply hope that he's not going to have to pull that plug yet, perhaps saving it for something else. I don't know. The whole mystery of Hussein's performance, it still is with us tonight. I think we've all gathered now that it probably was wrecked communications that caused his delay in reacting last night, and this certainly was a weak and feeble reaction tonight so far with these Scud missiles. I think that as we had to be careful at this hour last night, Dan, to kind of control our exuberance over the apparent success of our first strike into Iraq and around Baghdad, I think that we tonight have to be careful not to be too despondent about this new turn of events with this very weak attack, really, on Israel. I think there are a lot of reasons to be even more optimistic after this. For one thing, we have shown again that the Israeli high command is exceedingly sure-footed. They know what they're doing, and they've got command of their forces. That they scrambled when that first alert came and the Scud missiles started in. They scrambled their retaliatory forces that we now know from our radar that they were actually on the way in, possibly even over Iraq as far as we know. But when the scope of the attack from Baghdad was clear to them, they recalled those planes, and the discipline and the communications were there. They were recalled. There was not the counterattack that undoubtedly Hussein was attempting to provoke. Therefore, we do not have a changed political situation in the Middle East, which could alter our military situation tonight. We've got one small little battle won. We found out the Patriot works in a combat circumstance. A Patriot was fired, and we knocked one of their Scuds out of the sky. Now, if the Israelis had had a little more trust in our weaponry and had gotten their Patriots into position earlier, they might not have had any attacks, any successful attack tonight.
Walter, let's take a look. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. No.
Let's take a look again at the videotape of the attack, this aerial attack, and the Iraqis' response last night over Baghdad. These are the first pictures we've been showing them during the evening. And as we do so, that's the ITN reporters in the background. This is what it looked like last night over Baghdad. We're going to call in David Martin of the Pentagon. David, I understand that you have the name of the first American aviator casualty from last night's attack on Iraq.
That's right, Dan. The Pentagon has released his name. He is Lieutenant Commander Michael S. Speicher, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's spelled S-P-E-I-C-H-E-R. He was 33 years old. His hometown is listed as Jacksonville, Florida, but that may not be where he was born. Rather, that may simply be where he lived, because the aircraft carrier he served on, the Saratoga, was based in Mayport, Florida. His name again, and again I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Lieutenant Commander Michael Speicher, age 33. Now, I have now heard from 3 different sources that one other aircraft is lost. I've been asked to withhold the details because a search and rescue mission is still underway, but it does appear that one other aircraft, U.S. aircraft, has been lost.
So that would be a total of 2 U.S. aircraft lost, a total of 4 or 5 Allied Air Force airplanes confirmed lost, David.
I'm losing track of the Allied ones, Dan. I'm only good on the U.S. ones. So.
Well, I believe it's 2 U.S. confirmed now and 4, possibly 5 Allied total. If we can put up the Baghdad pictures again, Walter Cronkite, has there been anything since World War II that even approached this site of a modern city under fierce air bombardment and attack?
I certainly don't know of anything, Dan. Not in my experience. Certainly not in Vietnam. There were no cities of the same consequence as Baghdad in Vietnam. And anyway, there weren't any attacks quite like this, nor reaction quite like this that I know of. Ed Bradley was there, and you were there far more than I was, but I don't recall that. Certainly we haven't seen anything. I don't recall anything in Korea, anything like this. There wasn't anything like this, so I never was brought into that kind of attack.
You know, the amazing thing, Walter and Dan, is that with all of that kind of firepower last night, that it had so little effect.
I know.
Last night we had 3 casualties the course of the day. We don't know that, in fact, they took place over Baghdad.
Oh, that's right.
So with all of that firepower there, you have to wonder about Saddam Hussein's defense.
Well, also, we don't have any idea what the casualties were on the ground. The early indications were that civilian casualties were not great, but looking at these pictures, again, we have to bring our skepticism to bear. We have only a few seconds left. Go ahead, Walter.
Go ahead.
Dateline Jerusalem, President Bush has promised Israel that the United States will retaliate, quote, intensively against Iraq, this according to Israeli radio. Our CBS News coverage of the changing war in the Gulf, including Scud missile attacks on Israel, continues.
This is the News Channel 5 10 o'clock report with Chris Clark.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Clark. The war has changed tonight. Iraq has retaliated, and as promised, Israel was its target. As many as 10 Scud missiles have bombed sites in and around Tel Aviv. Citizens were told to put on their gas mask, but it appears this was not a chemical attack. There have been some reports of casualties, 7 minor casualties to be exact, reported so far. Israel is denying it has launched a counterattack. The White House says Saudi Arabia has been fired on, but the Pentagon says the missile never reached the ground. And another Allied warplane is reported missing. A second British fighter bomber has been downed. Confusion and fear in the Middle East tonight. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein made good on his promise and attacked Israel. He also sent a missile towards Saudi Arabia, but as these pictures show, Allied forces were able to intercept it before it hit Bahrain. The Pentagon says the Iraqi missile never reached the ground. That was not the case in Israel. The Israeli ambassador to the UN says between 8 and 10 Scuds hit, 3 of them in Tel Aviv. The mayor of Tel Aviv toured the area tonight.
There was a missile